Excellent. Welcome, everyone. We'll give it a minute or two. I see a few folks starting to trickle in to the platform. Hello, Juan. See Monish in here. Leah, give it another minute or so. Before you get started, I think you can see the amazing speakers here. Deshaun Carter, Adib Faikali, Camille Crowell, and our guest speaker from Forrester, Devin Dickerson. We'll get started shortly. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're watching from around the world. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm AJ Gray. I'm here just in the background, helping the folks here on the screen, the amazing and beautiful speakers you see with today's presentation. This event is being recorded and will be available on demand. We want to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions for us or any input, please submit them using the chat below or the question tab. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions live, and we'll get to your chat in the background as well. We do have Mia in the background handling any questions via the chat. So continue to send them in. We'll answer them live through the presentation and through the chat platform. Now, without further ado, I'll hand this off to today's host and our speakers. Off to you guys.
Thank you, AJ. Hi, everyone. I am Camille Crowley, and I look after AI marketing initiatives here at VMware Tanzu by Broadcom. And we're excited to talk with you today about AI FOMO, and don't miss a thing with Spring AI and Tanzu GenAI on Tanzu Platform. So I'm joined by a set of guests here, which I will have introduced momentarily. Let's see, can we get this to forward here? So today we're going to be going through some AI perspectives from Forrester, looking at market trends, use cases, and challenges, and then developer and platform engineering perspectives from the VMware Tanzu team. And I'm going to be moderating our session today, but as AJ mentioned, we're looking for this to be very casual and interactive. So I'd like to first have you get to know our speakers a little bit. So let's start with you, Devin, and do your intro, and so we can get to know you.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm Devin Dickerson. I'm a principal analyst at Forrester Research. My primary coverage area at Forrester is in cloud native application development, modern application development. I deal with a lot of legacy modernization initiatives, but also helping clients adopt emerging technologies in their development of applications, and also deliver applications that leverage emerging technology. My background was a software engineer for Department of Army, Department of Navy, and Department of Defense for many years.
Deshaun?
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Devin, for hanging out with us. My name is Deshaun. I'm a Spring developer advocate. I love my job. Spring, wherever it is, on the mainframe, on the edge, wherever it's at, that's my thing, and I'm happy to be here. Adib.
Hi, I'm Adib Faikali. I'm a distinguished engineer working at the intersection of platforms and developers. My goal in life is to make developers happy. AI makes me very happy, and so I've been really deeply working on how do we make AI accessible to all developers on the Tanzu platform in the easiest way possible.
Awesome. So, we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm in this space, both from a productivity perspective as well as delivering Gen AI apps, where we're actually utilizing AI inside the application. So, Devin, we'd love your help in just kind of getting us oriented in what you're seeing in the market in terms of use cases and cloud native development. So give us a little overview of kind of what you're seeing.
Sure, and for those who don't know, Forrester clients engage with analysts like myself through both our research, but also through inquiries that they schedule to talk to us about what we're seeing and about our research. And my conversations with Forrester clients center on cloud native development and modernization. And naturally, in the past 6 months, AI comes up quite a bit, especially with those development and architecture leaders. And the use cases I've come across in conversations typically fall under some way under the categories that you see here on the screen. Honestly, it's extremely diverse. I think there's an instinct right now to want to infuse AI into everything, because why not? But it's our job to apply some sort of taxonomy to what we are seeing. So I might further subdivide the use cases that we're looking at into certain concepts like predictive AI applications. In these applications, the objective is to leverage models that can make predictions about things like customer behaviors, or maybe things that can streamline or enhance business operations. And then, of course, there's generative AI, where descriptive and contextual input can be processed to provide what we hope is an equally contextual response, right? And in the cloud native modernization world, what I see is clients trying to figure out how to bring these capabilities to bear in their own applications. And these might be net new applications, or it might be legacy or even commercial off the shelf or SaaS applications that they're trying to AIify. So the development, I see that, but I also see things in industry verticals that are industry vertical specific. And the development of AI applications in those cases is really an opportunity to accelerate business outcomes, because the enhancements are really oriented around those specific domains and are specifically geared to accelerate outcomes in those domains. And in these cases, organizations are trying to figure out how to leverage both their business and technology experts in the same work streams to deliver those AI-powered applications and capabilities. And so where I have the most conversations on that last point is in financial services and with public sector clients.
That makes a ton of sense. I think we're seeing some similar things, and we're going to get into kind of like what we've been hearing in the market from prospects. But let's first kind of like level set. I think, Adib, let's go to you. Help us understand this information that Devin just shared in terms of what we're hearing with our VMware customers and prospects. Like, what are we also hearing from the ecosystem, if you can share that? I think we've got some research we can kind of dig into a little bit.
Yeah, we have our state of the app platform, where we talk to 700 plus customers about how they're leveraging and using AI. And I think that, to no surprise, there's two ways. As a developer, I know I'm using AI every day. So incorporating AI into the software development process, something you can see that most people are interested in, with about 50%. And it's really looking about how do I make my developers more productive. And that naturally fits very nicely with application platforms, because the whole point of an application platform is to reduce the friction. So when you combine platform friction reduction from a platform plus AI, you get like 2 turbo speed boosts. I don't know what the kids call it in Mario Kart. You get the little thing that makes you go fast, the gold star or something. And then the second one that's actually much more interesting to me personally as an application developer is customers really looking to add AI into their applications. Whether it could be something like, I want to build a chatbot that answers questions about my insurance contract, as an example. I know when my brother-in-law was visiting me, I wanted to know, he's visiting from Germany, he's going to drive my car, do I need to add him to the insurance? Does he need an international driver's license? And I had to call a call center and talk to a human, which was very, very annoying. I wish there was a chatbot that could answer that question, right? So enhancing applications by adding AI into them is another key thing that we see a lot of customers looking to do.
Absolutely makes sense. So, Devin, what about internal versus external use cases? What are customers telling you about what they are considering at this time?
Yeah, and I think that the data that you're showing actually is really helpful in showing a dividing line. So I'll just start by saying customers are clearly leveraging AI in a variety of use cases. And what you see here are just some of the standouts. I think organizations are kind of still in that phase of figuring out where it all fits in and where it can generate the most value. But I think when you look internally, it makes sense that there's things around productivity that AI can enhance that maybe is more of a low-hanging fruit. And when I talk about productivity, I always plug in the fact that for me, this isn't about having less people. It's about having technology take on tasks that allow your business and technology experts to focus on the things that actually bring value to your business and customer experiences. And when I look at these 5 items on the slide, I think that's one of the common threads in this phase of adoption that you can see. So things like employee productivity, knowledge management, and streamlining processes are all kind of in that bucket of internal facing activities that improve efficiency or accelerate performance internally, which in today's marketplace is very important. I don't look at many business capabilities as commoditized these days. People used to say buy for parity. I don't see it that way because markets are so global and so competitive. But then you also have things like content creation and enhancing end user experiences. And this is where organizations are trying to leverage technology to innovate, improve engagement, maybe improve speed to market. And so that's how I kind of look at the internal versus external use cases.
Makes sense. So, Deshaun, do you have some customer journey stories you can tell us about, or kind of what you're seeing in terms of the internal versus external argument?
Absolutely. I've already seen a lot of the cases where, hey, we want to get AI. We want to show that we're being competitive, that we have these new capabilities, and we're seeing those things like the chatbots. We've seen that, and that wave, from my perspective, has already kind of like started to trend down. Now we want to see real value. The top of the line here, this employee productivity. A lot of the developers I talk to, they have access. There's also a bucket of developers that do not have access yet. They are not allowed to use these things inside of their business, and they're the ones that are worried about, hey, am I going to be able to keep up? Because Devin said there's a competitive nature here, and if we're not on this ride, if we're not staying competitive and using AI where it can benefit us, then it's a little bit hard, to compete, right? Survival's not mandatory, but this employee productivity is definitely, I'm seeing it with customers, whether it's for code or just like a review that helps, but that's a hard thing to measure, right? Businesses are ready to move forward and start to deliver apps that are leveraging AI that are going to drive real value.
Yeah, and no, it won't replace people, but people that don't have access will be replaced, is what we're hearing. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where organizations are kind of getting started and what approaches they're taking. So Devin, back to you. Some great research in this space. So walk us through kind of what you are seeing.
Yeah, and given that I cover the development space, the convergence between my coverage in cloud native and modern application development, and then these more general AI topics is in customers trying to figure out how to incorporate AI into their cloud native and or application modernization strategies. And one thing that I find interesting here with the data is that it shows how in these relatively early days, there are still some really difficult choices to make that require some understanding of the landscape and the ecosystem of capabilities. And I think what that's leading to is clients having some concerns with going all in on a particular approach, with committing. They want flexibility. The space is moving so rapidly that the leading LLM for your particular use case might not be the same in 6 months as it is today. And so when they come in with cloud architecture that perhaps they want feedback on, or bringing AI capabilities into an application as part of an application design, what they're sometimes asking is, if we swap out the core AI features here in the future, does this architecture still work? Can we rip and replace? And so that's been a real common thread that I've come across multiple times.
Yeah. So does any one particular approach yield kind of better value for these customers, or are we still kind of uneven in what we're seeing in terms of being able to measure?
Yeah, I mean, so the survey data, as you can see, is pretty close. I don't think there's enough of a difference to say that there's that one particular method stands out. I mean, you can see clearly what the leader is, but I'm hesitant to endorse one or the other.
Yeah, that's totally fair. But we're having a casual conversation here, so thanks for giving us your thoughts. So like at the no matter the strategy you're going to pick, you're going to end up with some new considerations. So I kind of like to talk about those new considerations. Let's do a little role playing around app team versus platform and model team. So let's start with you, Deshaun, and talk about what are the things that people are struggling to get started with on their GenAI kind of app delivery.
First thing is access. There's concern, there's still hesitance to go to the commercial train somebody else's next version of the LLM with your data. But beyond that, there's kind of two camps that I see, right? There's this group of data scientists, we've heard that term and we've heard that role kind of expand. But then there's the software engineers that are more used to this cloud native methodology and how to turn things forward faster. And they're comfortable switching between LLMs. So these patterns I'm seeing, and I'm seeing the kind of two spaces of where we had kind of a data scientist role that was specific and use case oriented. Now I'm seeing a blend of software engineers doing more of the traditional data scientist role and vice versa. And the platform teams are the ones that are kind of encouraging and making that move even faster. So that's one of the big things I'm seeing is like the barrier to entry with all of the new movement technologies like Spring AI. It's been lowered so far that a data scientist doesn't have to be the only person that's delivering real AI value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Adib, what can you share with us in terms of things that the platform engineering should start to consider more?
I think the big key thing here is that all of these models are accessible via a remote API. From the perspective of a developer, interacting with this AI is a little bit like storing some data in your database or putting a message on a message queue. It's an API that you consume. The difference is that it's so fast moving. I remember like the early days of the phones, like the cell phones, and every year you got a phone that was twice as good as the previous year. So every year you were just like rapidly upgrading. It's kind of the same thing. Every week goes by, there's a new model, it has more parameters, it's been tuned in some way or another. And so as a platform team, you really have to find a way to rapidly provide access to your developers to all of these models. And otherwise you risk kind of becoming you have some models on the platform, but I'm so sorry, those models are like old. They're only like 3 months old, right? But they're just ancient in AI. They might as well be 100 years old and at the rate that this is moving at. So the key problem you have to solve for is, how do I get these models quickly? How do I deal with this really fast rate of change? Now, what does a platform need to do for that? Well, you need to have a really good way of curating and publishing this to your developers in the form of like marketplaces, as we do, for example, the Tanzu Platform. But you also need the apps to be able to work with these different models. So I'll kick it back to Deshaun, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about, can I do that with Spring AI?
I like the way that you said it. Yeah, we're putting data, we're pulling in. I look at these LLMs, it's kind of like a database. This is the metaphor I use, that's been pre-filled. It has a bunch of interesting information that has been pre-filled and ready for us to consume. And as a Spring developer, we've been comfortable with the Spring abstraction, allowing us to switch between databases like Oracle or Redis. That's been easy for us. There's been no concern because of the abstraction that Spring provides. And Spring continues to do the same thing with Spring AI. So the example is customers, developers can go and deliver an example. And when the new model comes out, they have this ability to switch without changing any of their code. They're writing through the abstraction, and then they can switch between these models. And because they are coming out so fast.
Yeah, and
that is a really powerful feature.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because a lot of there's a couple of things we hear from customers. One is a lot of concern about content safety. Like, is the AI going to do something it's not supposed to do? And then it's going to be really embarrassing, and it'll be like, on the front page news because the AI told you to do something stupid with your pizza or something like that. But the real issue here is one of, how do you scale the number of applications? So if you have 1 or 2 AI applications and you need to do something to improve your content safety in there, maybe you can go in and change the code of the application. But if you're a large enterprise with 100 applications that you've added AI into, you're going to need a way to make sure that you can apply content safety across all those 100 applications. So that becomes more of a platform problem, because implementing that in each of those 100 apps is inefficient, because you're going to have a wiki page with a checklist that says, these are all the things you're supposed to do in your AI apps. Did you do those things or not? And then please come in front of the AI review board and we're going to quiz you to see if you actually did all the things that you're supposed to do, or you could just have the platform provide those guardrails. And so this way, the default mode is you're allowed to do things, because when you try to do something that you're not supposed to do, the platform guardrails kind of stop you from doing that. So the
Yep.
content safety is one of those. The second one is the cost. People don't really know how much the stuff will cost. It's like some number per token. There's a scarcity of GPUs, blah, blah, blah. And so how do you make sure it doesn't all balloon massively? And the way you do that is, again, by having a platform, because platforms generally help you with resource optimization. We have things on platforms like autoscalers, like you shut down instances you don't need. Can we do the same sort of things for your AI application so that it doesn't end up costing more money than it should? And lastly, it's really like the security of it all. Like, are you accessing people's data securely? In particular, on that one, the security piece, all interesting stuff require transactional data. I want to ask the bank, the insurance company, when my brother-in-law visits, do I get to, do I have to, how do I get him to drive my car? What do I need to do? That would require the AI to actually have access to my contract with the insurance company. And that is not data that was trained on it. So how do you do that? So the patterns for implementing, whether it's RAG or function calling, those are key problems that platforms can really make a difference in. So those are the things I see.
Yep, makes sense. And I think, Devin, like, these types of challenges can have a chilling effect, right? Like, so tell us more about the concerns you're hearing. And I specifically, the safety piece is definitely, we in the Tanzu team are always concerned about an enterprise readiness in that area. So tell us a little bit more about kind of what you're seeing.
Yeah, and I think Adib and Deshaun really hit on some important points when in talking about the enterprise side of the story. And I think that's what you're really seeing in the data. You're seeing a convergence between a rapidly moving, highly disruptive technology with conservative, by design and by requirement, organizations. And so it's early days, and at Forrester, we deal with enterprise customers. I know you deal with a lot of enterprise customers too. And so I'm not in any way surprised to see the concerns being about skills, governance, data privacy, and also efficacy impacts related to data quality. All of these things kind of right there at the top. When enterprises adopt a technology, it's not like a startup. It can't be. And folks, and sometimes even employees and customers sometimes lament the fact that the global bank or the government agency moves a little bit slower. But when you look at these concerns, it's easy to note that they are quite real. And these organizations have real challenges that only surface when you reach a certain scale or when you're in highly regulated environments. And so I think the important takeaway for end users, especially at the enterprise, is that these kinds of technologies need to be viewed as part of an overall strategy for adoption, modernization, innovation, whatever that focus is, and thinking about it in terms of capabilities, not always thinking about it in terms of applications. And so I think these issues mentioned in the survey are really good examples of what an AI adoption strategy might want to address for development, architecture, technology teams.
Makes sense. There's also, some attitude research you've done, right? Like looking at what people are concerned about in terms of the barriers within their organizations. And this is, walk us through kind of like what are the things we're seeing. I think we've already touched on some of these, but pull out for us what you think might have been missed.
Yeah, I think as always, barriers and concerns often have some significant intersection. And so when we think about barriers to adoption, I think one thing that's important is don't think about individuals experimenting with AI or the cloud-born startup, because these folks don't have the same barriers to adoption that the big enterprise does. I say think about the big bank, think about the Defense Department if you were trying to offer solutions to these folks. The government agency or global bank has to innovate, yes, but they also have to maintain public trust because it's key to their organizational success. So I think when you look at this data through that lens, it becomes clear why the things you see here are so important, especially to these types of organizations. And I think a common thread across all of these is in risk mitigation. It's already been mentioned by Deshaun and Adib in different ways, but managing risk and fostering safety is a key precursor to both adoption of an emerging technology, but also innovating with it. And so I think organizations are trying to shift from a point where they're not playing keep up or catch up, and where they're leveraging AI capabilities to accelerate business outcomes and build competitive advantage. But I think getting there requires a strong foundation, especially in these highly regulated industries or in the large scale enterprise. But we do eventually need to get to value and innovation. And I think that this foundation that you see in terms of these barriers is the key there.
Makes sense. You know, I think also, though, there's kind of a real big shift in mindset when we're talking about delivering, delivering externally, especially, right? Like, we have this new paradigm. I want Adib to walk us through this. We talk about the scenario often, but he of course does it best. So Adib, take us through kind of like this mindset shift.
Yeah, okay. So traditionally as app developers, we build these business applications and we expect the applications to be deterministic. If I go into my online banking app and I, pull up a how much money did I spend last month report, right? It's going to give me a number. If I ask this question on Monday and I ask this question on Tuesday, I'm going to get exactly the same answer, which is exactly what we want. And so we've invested a lot as an industry in creating automation testing frameworks. I remember back when people didn't have things like JUnit, and that's when I had lots of hair. And now, we spend a lot of time kind of going like, did we set up pipelines? Did we put in automated tests? Did we do integration tests? And we're trying to prove that our software works because our software is very complicated. And not only does it have a lot of code that we write, it has a lot of dependencies that we pull in from other parts of the ecosystem. And that is predicated on you can actually predict in the test case what the response is going to be. The problem with adding AI is that how do you write such a test case? Because if I ask it a question, I'm going to get a response. I ask the same exact question a minute later, I might get a slightly different response. So it's really hard for me as a developer to write a test case that says, does the AI doing what it's supposed to do? And Deshaun, you're
and
looking.
On top of that, right, I can ask the same question, but given a different context. So I asked the same question, but given a different context, the questions that I asked before that question, that adds a whole nother layer of complexity.
Yeah.
So I can ask the same question, but if I ask 5 other questions before, then they're going to be wildly different, not just 1 or 2 words. So there's big things to address here. And the cool thing is, one of the patterns that I've seen is they're using the AI to then say, oh, I got this response. Does this response answer that question? And they're using the AI to validate their AI, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And that brings up a really good point is like, this can seem a little bit mysterious on how to actually properly do this. But I think there's precedent in the industry. Just think of when you call an airline or somebody, you call a call center and you typically hear the message that says, hello, this message is being recorded for quality control purposes, because the human agents in the call center are a little bit like the AI. Like, you ask them a question as a customer, that's the prompt, they answer, and hopefully they answer within the guidelines of what is expected of them to the level of their abilities, to the minimum required by the company. Now, in order to make sure that that's happening, you typically record those, and then there's some sort of human or some sort of software that will look at that and then say, did this agent number 1 answer the question correctly? Did agent number 2 answer correctly? And if you don't need to listen to every call, if you listen to enough of them, you can kind of tell where your agents are struggling or which agents are doing their job, which agents aren't doing their job. And so this is also like a similar problem to what happens in a factory that's putting out, car parts or computer parts. Like, you produce 10,000 components and you can't check every one of them. So what you do is you sample. You say every 100 components, I'm going to pull 3, and I'm going to validate and check that they're working. And if one of those 3 isn't working, that tells me potentially what percentage over a period of time means that, like, what's the minimum quality I have. So this type of statistical quality control is a fairly developed discipline in areas outside of application development, and we now somehow have to bring it into the application domain.
I love this example and this metaphor for that reason. This is a very, very clear example of this is what customers are doing. One of the reasons they don't want to be calling commercial APIs is when it's closer, when they've got kind of their arms around it, they can do this sampling of both the question and the response, the entire context, and they have the data that they need in order to make sure that they're staying within those guardrails. I love this example.
Yeah, and it's exactly. So this is kind of the intersection, I think, between application architecture and platform, is that your platform needs to enable you to do this type of thing, right? So so I'm looking forward to helping developers kind of up level and upscale on the statistical quality control that's possible with these modern systems. And it's kind of amazing to me that the quality control oversight is another AI, right? Like, it's an AI looking after an AI, but it still kind of works, and it's helpful.
And I think it's also the AI is helping AIs, that agentic kind of approach is like also brings up the need for this platform conversation to be, had sooner rather than later. Devin, help us start out with how you counsel organizations, and then we'll go to Adib and Deshaun to provide their kind of inputs as well. So what do you like to tell them?
This is what I came for. I want to hear this part.
Yeah, and I'll say that some excellent points have already been made by Deshaun and Adib. I'll go back to something that was said earlier. Abstractions are one of my favorite words when I talk to clients. In the past several years, we've already seen how platforms have supercharged the adoption of what otherwise might have been extraordinarily complex technologies in the cloud native ecosystem. And I think that we're seeing a similar pattern take place with the development of AI applications, both the development of AI applications that are end user facing, but also leveraging AI to enhance internal processes. I think platforms do some really critical things for customers when it comes to adopting complex technologies and concepts. I think the most important one of those, though, and I tell this to clients all the time, is how they abstract away the complexity of adopting and taking advantage of certain technologies and patterns. When you build an application for an enterprise use case, you don't always have the luxury of just thinking about the things that produce actual value, of just thinking about business logic or the user experience. That's because you have to think about security. You have to think about scale. You have to think about testing and deployment, as Adib mentioned testing and how this is a different paradigm for testing. You have to think about integrations with existing systems or data sources. These things are complicated. And I always tell clients that if you want to help your developers and your other technical experts, one of the main things that you have to do is shield them from the complexities of non-value adding overhead type activities, so they can focus on the parts of their job that deliver actual value. And in this case, it's the business logic, it's the user experience, it might be the modeling, it might be tailoring solutions to particular use cases. So adopting capabilities that enable your tech organization to build these AI-infused applications through a platform approach that takes on some of that complexity, that takes on some of that overhead, for most customers, that's going to be extraordinarily beneficial compared to individual teams figuring it out for themselves like we did back in the day.
I really like the way you said that. You connected the dots in my head, letting the platform take on that complexity. So that as a developer, right, I want to do a git commit. I want to have access to things and make it easy. And if the platform can take that complexity, that'd be awesome. I like the way you said that.
Awesome. Adib, any kind of thoughts on that as well? Like, maybe even anything you think platform engineering orgs should consider to look for in a platform?
I think going back to how fast can the platform allow you to curate things for the developers And I've seen like a common anti-patterns with platform teams where they make the platform too complicated. And in making it too complicated, they just say, yeah, my developers, they'll just write a Docker file, or they're going to write a Kubernetes Helm chart, and then my pipeline is going to take it and deploy it, right? And then they forget that when you do that, it makes it really hard for people to try out new things. Once they get something working, they don't want to change it, neither the developers nor the platform engineers. And you know, most importantly on this is that generally speaking, there is not historical precedent as a developer working in any large enterprise on how to do AI. Therefore, you have to basically assume I don't know anything and I need to trial and error. And by trialing and erroring, I can see what's working and what doesn't work. And so I need to have the ability to push code to production really, really fast. It's not unusual to want to say, I have an idea in the morning, I literally want to see this in production by evening. I want to measure how well that's working and learn from that to see how well this particular approach to AI or a prompt or whatever it is working with my customers. This is very different than if you were like, I don't know, building a mobile app, and then you could make a mock-up and you can like show it to a bunch of 5 customers. You can get feedback from them. You really don't have a substitute for trying stuff out live to a certain extent. And so how do you, like, the key thing from the platform, it's got to let you do this. Like, it's the whole, you got to be this tall to ride the roller coaster. You need a strong platform to do AI development. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to move as fast as the ecosystem moves.
And with that, I will make sure that everyone knows that, you know, VMware Tanzu does have platform capabilities in market today that can help organizations with this journey. So, you know, Spring AI, you know, Deshaun, we're so honored to have you here today to talk about Spring with us, and, you know, accelerating app delivery without having to reskill, utilizing Java and, you know, the enterprise readiness frameworks that developers are really familiar with, and like the richness of the ecosystem is all brought to bear when we're talking about Spring AI. We have some announcements coming up at Explore around Spring AI, some exciting stuff. I have links in here to both Deshaun and Adib are speaking at Explore next week, and they have some announcements to talk about. And so, you know, there's Spring AI, but there's also GenAI on Tanzu Platform. So if you're an existing Tanzu Platform customer, you will be able to actually utilize the public beta to get to the scale pattern that Adib is referencing, like around making sure you have a secure and scalable infrastructure for those GenAI apps. So you can utilize the links in our follow-up to be able to go out and try these things out. And just a plug, if you're going to be at Explore, or even if you're not, there's going to be some very big announcements coming up next week. We're very excited. We couldn't wait until after Explore to have, you know, like get some teasers out there to you, because this is kind of big news. So Deshaun will be both on our Spring One tour as well, our Spring One event, as well as Explore, doing some talks on Spring AI and Gen AI. And then Adib is going to be delivering during Explore some information around Tanzu's products and Private AI Foundation. So some exciting stuff for you to look forward to. Even if you can't be there, be sure to watch for the announcements. We have some blogs coming out next week and PR. So some exciting things ahead. And this is just the beginning. I just want to say thank you to the panelists for joining today. Really great, lively discussion. Special thanks to Devin. I put you on the ropes a couple of times. I appreciate your graciousness. And, you know, this is an interesting space, so we're all wanting to know kind of what the inside scoop is. So we appreciate your time. And thank you to Adib and Deshaun for walking us through what they're hearing with customers and some really interesting constructs for us to think about moving forward in this new world of Gen AI. So thank you everyone for your time. And with that, do we have any questions? We have a moderator looking at questions for us today.
I have a question for Devin. Devin, if there's one thing, just one thing that you can tell as a leave behind, what's the one thing that enterprises should be thinking about AI right now today?
You know, this is probably a bias coming from my coverage and my background. I dealt with a lot of tactical and distributed applications. I would actually be thinking about how AI capabilities fit within your approach to distributed architecture. I truly believe that an overarching application trend is that applications are becoming more distributed. There's a need for performance, latency. I see cloud providers going towards more distributed architectures. I think don't limit yourself to centralized architecture, because whenever there's a new emerging technology, something disruptive, it's an opportunity to look at your overall strategy. And I think that moving towards a more distributed paradigm has unique benefits for AI applications.
That was good. I like that. Adib, same question.
Experiment. Start trying stuff out. If you're a developer, there's a lot of stuff you can run on your laptop, things like Olama, that is going to be purely within your organization. So even if you don't yet have approvals from your bosses to, because there's concerns about that, like use Spring AI, you can actually try stuff out on your laptop and easily switch out to, you know, something more server side once you can show the value. So use it, experiment with it, learn from it.
That's good stuff.
Very good stuff. All right. I think we are good on questions, right?
I think we have one here that we could just ask to the panel.
Good.
How do you navigate data privacy and security challenges when deploying Gen AI workloads across multi-cloud or hybrid cloud platforms?
So, Adib, Deshaun, either?
I can take this one. I think that the approach you take for data privacy and security and all of that is the same approach you would take even if it wasn't Gen AI, right? So it's like, you need to know what is the data that should be private and what shouldn't be private. And you need to then know, like, how long do you keep it for? When do you delete it? So it is a data engineering problem. And I'm very biased in the Spring ecosystem. We've been doing this for only 20 years. One of the best data engineering and integration technologies in the enterprise world. And so I would basically say that you navigate it by giving fine-grained control and allowing the apps to only get what they need. And there are two specific things we do in Spring AI for that. We make it possible for you to do something called function calling. So the model can say, I need this piece of information, and then your code can then just give it only that one piece of information it needs, or the common pattern of retrieval augmented generation, where you strip down and just give it only what it needs and nothing more than that. So that's my take on that.
I like that take. The other thing I'll add is we said, I think it was Devin, he talked about being conservative, right, as we're moving forward, and that's still in place. Companies have been conservative. They've been holding on to a bunch of this data, thinking that at some point it's going to be able to drive some value, for their company. And now we're seeing that, and where that data lives, that's where we're going to find the really interesting workloads. And that's where things like AI are going to, Spring AI specifically, are going to make it easy to access those things via function calling or RAG, for example. So there's definitely some waves of things that are kind of getting closer and closer, right? That gravity is drawing things closer, and it's going to be really interesting. We're in an interesting time.
Any last thoughts?
This is great.
I think those are all the questions we have here, Camille, but I do just have, I know you mentioned it earlier, but folks, if you're attending Explore, if you'll be with us in Las Vegas next week, check out these sessions you see on screen. And if you're not able to join us there, I did put in a link to Spring One, which is free and virtual, and you can attend some sessions there as well. So feel free to register for Spring One if you're not going to be in Las Vegas to see these beautiful faces in person at Explore.
Devin, you'll be there too, right?
I sure will. If anybody wants to look me up, find me on LinkedIn, and happy to have a conversation.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Thanks.
Well, thanks again, everyone. A great session, and we'll see you at Explore.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.